People, Deluded, I'm back again. Good morning on this Monday morning over here in England if you're not here. But what was I going to speak about? First and foremost, there's not much to speak about in relation to Arsenal, so I might as well offer some talking points. The first one I wanted to speak about is actually in my head, and we know Arteta. Listen, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. We've seen managers at other clubs start well, by the end of their tenure hasn't gone well, or managers start poorly, end up winning stuff. So we can't be in a rush to jump to conclusions and things. The one thing I can say is, regardless, in Arteta's early time here, what I do like is obviously he's united the fan base. Obviously he's galvanized the players. That's two things. There's a clear playing style, or an attempt of a playing style, or a clear philosophy, or a clear attempt to install a philosophy. And that's one thing we said the term now Arsenal is head coach. Regardless of personnel and things like that, you have to be able to do this. And one thing I like is Arteta, I'm not going to say he's getting the best out of everybody, because he's not necessarily, and it's in his early times, and he hasn't obviously been in the role as long as Emery to really critique them. But I think he's better at getting the best out of existing players more than Emery. Emery is a good coach, a well-established coach. I'm not going to disrespect him. But the T term was head coach. We know we needed better players then. We know we need better players now. But a key part of this role was, to a degree, working with what you have, developing young players, developing existing talents, and just in general, I think people look. And ironically, I know Wenger will get a lot of stick, but Wenger was very big on this. It's like the solution is always new. Of course, you need to identify areas, but coaching is a big part of the role. He seems to be coaching Maitland-Niles, who people thought, myself included, it looked a bit bleak for him at fullback. Kolasinac, again, it's early days, but he looks more confident in defensive situations. And even if Maitland-Niles and Kolasinac are poor defensively, he's set up the team in a way that it's less glaringly obvious that you see mistakes by these two, or they're in situations where they might have struggled previously under Emery. So that is one thing I like about Arteta. I believe with Arteta's philosophy and what I've seen so far, it's as white and black to a degree as, yes, he needs a centre-half, he needs a centre-mid, because you can clearly see what he wants. With Emery, I couldn't say that. I could say, yes, he needed help. Obviously, there were some players that weren't cut out, but you didn't really see a philosophy, you didn't really see anything like that. And I like how there's better game management. I'm not trying to find positives where there are none, because we dropped points, and again, we need to be able to focus for sustained periods of time at the highest level. But you look at how we've definitely seen against Crystal Palace, or just in general, when we've gone down to 10 men, like against Palace in our last game, you've seen us capitulate. So at least the scoreline didn't get any worse. There's more game management, there's more emphasis on tactical fouls, there's fighting spirit within the team now. In fact, even Socrates said after the game, he was happy about the first 35. Obviously, he recognised where he went wrong, but there's more fighting spirit, and that's what I like to see. I mean, I believe in Arteta, and I do think it's genuinely a case of, I can say, okay, go out and get him a left back, go out and get him a centre mid, because I have faith in Arteta to really understand players and get the best out of them, but clearly utilise them. Again, Pepe is not playing the best, but since he's been installed under Arteta, there's a dramatic improvement than under Emery, to a degree. I might be exaggerating. You never felt with Emery really that especially that the players, but especially the creative sort of players, the strikers and the players that are here to make a difference, they fully felt trusted. They fully were utilised, or they were put into their best positions and whatnot. Again, Ozil was really anonymous away at Selhurst Park, but that goal sums up what I'm talking about. Look at the movement from all our players. Arteta's found a way, at least. Okay, we can talk about Aubameyang on the flanks, but Aubameyang came off the flanks to score. Ozil picked up space. That's what you want with Ozil, higher up the field, picking up space. You want someone like David Luiz, Torreira, Xhaka, all these players to start the initial moves, because they've got passes in them. We need to pass it forward. And there's a bit more confidence with even people like Socrates, who are anything but a ball-playing centre-half. There's more confidence, and that only comes from working on the training ground, repeating things, and clarity in relation to everything that's going on. This is a bit irrelevant to what I'm saying in relation to Arteta, people, but I thought I'd mention it. This is in relation to Ozil. I think he made this a few years ago before he actually managed Ozil. When you're an artist, you're never going to perform 9 out of 10 every week. It's much more difficult for a creative player to perform at that level. The opposition always try and stop you, so sometimes you don't shine, and then people ask, why don't you shine? You didn't do anything in this game. When that happens, you get criticised, especially when it happens in big games. But you cannot deny Ozil is a special player. His movement, his calmness, his final ball is superb. What I like about Arteta is you actually hear from his early days, he wasn't exactly the best of people person. But way before he even started jumping on the management thing, he clearly realised, okay, I need to fix up in that department. And he is. How you might get through to Ozil, it might be different from Aubameyang. You might be able to shout at Aubameyang and get a reaction. Ozil you might have to put an arm around him. Maitland-Niles might be different to Nelson. Do you get it? You could dig Nelson out in public or in front of the whole group and he might not have a problem with that. You might, I don't know, you do that to Saka, you might get a negative effect. And people are not, like Pochettino once said, a good friend of Arteta's, people are not furniture, the players are people. You need to understand that, and that's arguably bigger than any tactics you can install in the game in today's day and age, people, really and truly, because you can have all the tactics in the world. If you're not able to galvanise your players, if they don't feel you care about them, you're not going to transmit, and sooner or later there is going to be an issue. Now obviously I've made a video in relation to Aubameyang's not being selected for the next 3 games in the league, or I don't know if that counts in the FA Cup, but I'm going to assume so. And we need players to step up. I made a video talking about players stepping up. We need players to step up. We need Lacazette to step up and find his goal-scoring touch. I don't like placing expectation to do this thing at young players' shoulders, but I'm hoping Martinelli personally can say something. I'm hoping Pepe can say something. Even if you're not directly in these positions, somebody's got to, we've all got to step up, especially at Stamford Bridge away from home, and someone's got to score these goals. You would be inclined to believe potentially with Tyrese going out on loan, with Balogun not looking around the first team picture beyond training at this moment, and things like that, Eddie Nketiah might have been given a stay at Arsenal. We know he needs to go and play football. We know the first half of his season only gave 2 league starts, and there are some positives from the Leeds spell, but it weren't what we wanted. In terms of depth, in terms of if something happens to Lacazette and Aubameyang, who plays up front, that could be something for Eddie Nketiah to do. Now we've got Martinelli who can play through the middle, but there is a case to have another young striker on the bench. For us, it's good. Is it necessarily what's going to help Eddie develop as a player? Is he going to get a substantial amount of games here? If he earns it, then yes, but if a betting man, you potentially say no. Could he get more minutes elsewhere? I don't know if Aston Villa believe in his capabilities as a striker, people, but you're hearing Norwich, you're hearing Aston Villa, who are begging for a striker. You're hearing Dean Saunders, he might get game time there. Whether he can carry them is another thing. They're fighting relegation. It'd be good for him. He's got a bunch of Championship clubs and a bunch of and a couple of Premier League clubs. You're hearing Norwich are interested in him as well. In fact, the Daily Mail has actually said Eddie Nketiah will make a decision on his next loan destination in the next 48 hours. People. Nketiah will pick from Villa, Bristol City, Sheffield Wednesday, and Nottingham Forest. These are the same teams that were in the report a while ago, and whatnot. And he probably does have to go out on loan, because it says here, when pressed about Nketiah potentially getting a chance, it said, at the moment we have to think mid to long term with Nketiah. We have to respect his evolution and development. We don't have to make a decision just based on 2-3 games. Now, clearly the short-term decision can be to keep him, but again, what is going to bring him closer to being a 20 league goal minimum striker, to be given an extended chance, is to go out and get football. In the medium term, he needs to, this was a season of senior development, going out and getting appearances, people. He needs to go out and get that. His lead spell working under Bielsa, and actually the hardship potentially helped him improve. But look at the papers, people. He scored goals, especially off the bench, and did his Nketiah moments. But 2 league starts. His fellow Arsenal striker who's on loan in League One, Tyrese John-Jules, got 65 minutes the other day and started in Lincoln's draw at the weekend. He's already, 2 starts for Eddie, 1 start for him on his loan spell. And they've got a game on Tuesday against Bolton. It could be 2-2. So the short term, medium term is obviously Eddie going out and getting games. Long term is potentially, does he go out on loan again? Does he push for a first team spot this season, or whatnot? And I listen, you don't know me, I love young players. I always bet on these young players and things to make it. But if I'm cynical, there's only really a couple that I believe genuinely can make it here. So if worse comes to worse, if these players, especially the English ones, I want Emil, Nelson, Eddie. I'm not saying these are the ones I'm talking about, but these are players to highlight where our academy can be going better. If these players are not good enough to make it here or don't make it here, these players should all be fetching anything from 15 to 20 million minimum right now. So they're only going to get better. We need to protect our investments in a sense, people. So it doesn't look like Eddie's going to get games here. It's a bit irrelevant, but Kosterman, Borussia Dortmund are interested in Lucas Kosterman. Apparently, there remains a good chance RB Leipzig will sell him in the summer if the 23-year-old fullback doesn't sign a contract extension. I know our right-back links have gone away, especially with Maitland-Niles' great form, especially how he played against Zaha, but you've heard Kosterman linked with us previously. If he is going to be sold, are the boards or whoever, if true, going to go back in for him? Only they can answer that one there, people. I think that's it. Now, I think we've got to talk about Sergio Aguero briefly, quickly, people. Very briefly. I mean, if you've been watching the Premier League, Sergio Aguero is a hallmark in Premier League football. He's been nothing short of a legend. He's been nothing short of a history maker. You saw him break records at the weekend. He moved ahead of Thierry Henry, and I think he made some good statistic at the weekend in relation to hat-tricks. Either way, if you've been watching the Prem, you know who Sergio Aguero is. There's not one defence he hasn't terrorised. There's not one defender that hasn't been given nightmares. He's been a wonderful signing. And what? Obviously, football's moved on and it looks a bit silly now. But what didn't City play like 30 million euros or just over that for him? That looks like a steal. He is a Manchester City legend. He is a Premier League legend. He's not better than Thierry Henry. Let's not be silly, people, regardless of what these statistics say. Because if you put them both in a football pitch at their prime, Sergio, I love you, Sergio. You lot know me, always praising, but he can't even lace up Thierry Henry's boots. Sergio is a quality striker, but Thierry Henry is a complete world-class player. There's levels to it. To get it now, Sergio is a gunman in front of goal, and I'm not disrespecting him. And obviously, the Arsenal badge is coming out to a slight degree in my comments, and you can see it. But moving on quickly, He's scored 156 goals. He scored more than that, people. It actually doesn't say on this graphic how many he has, but either way, people, he scored 126 goals with his right foot. With his left foot, he scored 33. He scored 17 with his head. It says other one, so I don't know what else he could have scored with. 156 of his goals came inside the area, 21 outside. He has scored some great strikes, but we all know, like a striker would be, you come alive in the penalty box, and Sergio scores all sorts of goals. Headers, tap-ins, great dribbles, bangers. He does it all, man, and he's a very intelligent footballer, especially with his passes. I really like him. His favourite opponents, he scored 15 goals against Newcastle United, 11 against Spurs, and 10 against Chelsea. 12 hat-tricks, 26 penalties. Only Shearer 10 has scored more goals against Manchester United in the Premier League era than Aguero, which is at 8, which obviously is going to put him in high regards with obviously Manchester United, Manchester City fans, sorry. And he is contracted until 2021, so I wonder if he'll actually keep it moving, people. As you lot know, he's level with Thierry Henry in terms of goals. There are only 4 men above Sergio in the all-time standings. And obviously it's going to take a lot to obviously reach 260, which Alan Shearer has. And I think he's actually up there in considerably less appearances than Alan Shearer. There's a good possibility he can move into second place above Frank Lampard, who is on 177. Remembering Lampard is a midfielder, so that's a fantastic record. And Andy Cole is on 187. That's a funny number. If you know 187. And Ray Rooney is on 208. But either way, whether he gets above them or not, I mean, it's to say he's in good company around them names is an understatement, people. Sergio has been a quality player, and from reading a couple of articles, you hear how he actually watches rival strikers a lot. But in games or in build up to games, he's very big on listening to the pre-match analysis of keepers, defenders, movements they take, potential traits they may have, and he'll study that going into the game. And is it a coincidence he does things like that and is dedicated to his craft to that level and is having these amount of goals and whatnot? It's crazy, people. Like I said, he's on 177 league goals allegedly. I thought it was 175. I could be wrong. Either way, he's on 170 odd. He scored 7 against Liverpool, 10 against Chelsea, 9 against Villa, 8 against Arsenal and United apiece. Obviously, I've already said 10 against Chelsea and 11 against Spurs, so he is a big game player. There's not much more I can say to praise him, more than you already know. He is a fantastic player, people, and nothing short of that. You already know he's a quality player. There isn't much more to talk about or add, so I'm not going to bore you lot with anything, people. Allegedly, Xavi's close to taking over the Barcelona position and being a former Barcelona player. I'm sure that's up their street. Although I have seen in recent hours that Pochettino's been linked with that role. Again, Xavi's played under Pep. He's been at Barcelona. You'd like to think he's got the Barcelona philosophy and whatnot locked down. He's been in the Middle East coaching and playing. So if he's ready for the position, he's ready. You hear Abidal and whatnot. I've been meeting with him. If he's ready, he's ready. If not, I don't know. But on that note, I need to keep it moving and get out of here, people. I'm going to be late. People, Deluded. As usual, thank you very much for your questions and rocking and watching me each and every time.